Our next speaker is named Sue Jacques. She is our international representative hailing from Canada. That counts, right? I think. Okay. So she's a speaker, an author, and a former death investigator who has investigated thousands of untimely deaths. And her word is grace. Please welcome Sue Jacques.
Thanks, sweet. I used to wish that doorbells were pause buttons, because every time I rang one, I knew that I would be devastating someone's perfectly ordinary life by notifying them about someone else's completely unexpected death. You see, for nearly 20 years, I was the person you never want to see on the other side of the door. Allow me to explain. For the better part of my career, I was a forensic death investigator at the medical examiner's office, a profession that has since been erroneously glorified by television and cinema. I became a death investigator just before death became cool. As Hollywood was busy glamorizing homicides and video game makers were in the throes of gentrifying violence, I was in the trenches, touching, probing, smelling, and yes, even tasting the real thing. My life was like CSI on steroids. Oh, and get this. My husband is a funeral director. We call ours a match made in heaven. Among my many responsibilities as a death investigator, the hardest was to notify people just like you of the sudden and often violent death of a loved one. God, how I dreaded that moment. In fact, as I stood on each one of those doorsteps, I used to secretly pray that I was at the wrong address. But that prayer was never answered. Instead, I was uninvited into an endless parade of living rooms, kitchens, and family secrets. Now, let me set this up for you. Prior to ringing your doorbell, I would have spent a significant amount of time at the scene of your loved one's death, examining their body, gathering medical evidence, interviewing witnesses, and confirming their identity. And then after the cause of death had been established, I'd be in touch with you again to explain it in terms that you could understand. It can be impossible to explain things that human beings can never understand, though. Things like murder and mayhem and mystery. During my time at the medical examiner's office, I witnessed astonishing acts of disrespect and unspeakable visions of violence. From murders to motor vehicle accidents, tornadoes to trauma, suicides to sexual asphyxia, decomposition to decapitation, and infants to centenarians. When it comes to death, I've pretty much seen it all. And along my incredible journey from corpses to carpe diem, I witnessed the most amazing and gut-wrenching, I heard the gut-wrenching stories of people's dreams and hopes, their stories of regret, their accomplishments, their fears. I heard it all. But I also bore witness to exquisite examples of love, courage, resilience, and grace. And this evening I'm going to share with you one of the most poignant lessons I learned as a death investigator. It's about pause and effect. After investigating thousands of deaths, drying rivers of tears, giving heaps of hugs, and breaking countless hearts, I can tell you this. Every single second of every single life is precious. No, it's even more than precious. It's a miracle, a blessing. It's a gift. But we take our time here for granted. We spend too much of it doubting, criticizing, and judging ourselves and one another. Now, clearly, this isn't a room full of homicidal maniacs. Do I have that right? I think it's safe, though, to say that as a society, we have gotten way too good at killing each other's dreams, assassinating each other's character, and annihilating each other's opinions, one word, one keystroke, and one thoughtless action at a time. We even slay potential relationships before getting to know people by prejudging them. If someone doesn't seem sane enough, we're quick to write them off. I learned this lesson from a soft-spoken elderly gentleman I'll call Ned. I met Ned at the scene of his roommate's suicide. And without getting too graphic, I'll just tell you that Ned's roommate had had enough of the trials and tribulations that haunted his life. And so he chose to find relief at the far end of his own shotgun. Now, Ned and his roommate shared a small suite in a dilapidated boarding house on the seedy side of town. 2 single beds, 1 hot plate, and a bar fridge held together with duct tape more than filled their tiny space. After finishing my investigation and arranging for the body to be transported, it was time for me to go, and I knew I would be leaving Ned alone. And so as I gently touched his arm, I said, "Thank you for your help, sir. I'm sorry for your loss." Only then did tears well up in Ned's eyes, and he began to weep. "I know this must be painful," I said. "I can't imagine what you're going through." "That's not why I'm crying," he said. "I'm crying because you're the first person in years to call me sir." I had to pause for a moment and take in that incredible, incredible statement. And then I asked Ned to share his story. It seems that he had been a very successful man at one point in his life, but too many drinks and too many bad decisions got in his way. And before he knew it, he'd lost everything: his family, his job, his home, his hope. He wound up living on the streets, respectless, and that rooming house was the finest place he'd laid his head for a very long time. Now, if I'd met Ned under any other circumstances, I'm pretty sure I would have avoided eye contact and kept on walking. We've all done it. I'm no different than you. But thankfully, I paused in that moment, and I asked Ned to share his story, and I'm so glad I did, because Ned's story changed my perspective, and he helped me realize that we each have a story that deserves to be heard. That's what life is, a story that deserves to be heard. I'm not sure what happens. I wonder sometimes what would happen if we all paused a little more often. And I'm going to make a suggestion that time is it's such a priceless commodity. We don't realize that. We forget it. And I'm wondering how we can embrace the fact that we or someone we love could be knocking on heaven's door at any given moment. So what can we do differently? Well, I humbly suggest we begin by taking a collective deep breath. We all just need to slow down a little bit and enjoy this incredible journey. Come on, let's try it together. Will you do this with me? Big, deep breath. Now that was easy, wasn't it? I want you to remember that pause we just shared because it's vital. That pause represents the instant between experiencing something and responding to it. And that instant, just a second or two, can save a reputation. It can save a relationship. That instant can even save a life. So many of the people whose deaths I investigated might still be alive today if only they had paused. Paused to gather their courage. Paused to listen to their gut. Paused to say, "I'm sorry." Paused to call a cab. Paused to ask for help. Paused to say yes or no or stay or go. Paused to say, "I love you." Sadly, it's too late for them, but it is not too late for you and me. What if we all paused more often? We can and we must. Why? Because pauses are powerful. In them lies opportunity. Opportunity for forgiveness. Opportunity for compassion. Opportunity for growth. I'm going to leave you with 5 simple ways that you can pause and have an effect, not only on your life, but on the lives of others. And to do that, I'm going to lighten things up a little bit, okay? Now, I've been talking a lot about doors this evening. And I don't know about you, but I think maybe it's time we do some slamming. I call this the doorway to grace. Feel free to help me out. Before your next post or tweet or share, pause for a moment. Come up for some air and think about the folks on the receiving end. Will they still feel respected after you hit send and when you're driving in your car down a busy road, rush hour adding to your heavy load? Pause for a sec and let the guy in. As it turns out, merging really isn't a sin. When someone new gets hired where you work, pause to say, hey, if you don't, you're a jerk. Remember how it felt when you were brand new? I bet you just loved it when folks welcomed you. And if you're talking with someone on the phone in your hand, instead of to the person at the checkout stand, pause, hang up and look the clerk in the eye, then put a smile on your face and simply say, hi, listen, life is short and death is long and we need to find ways to all get along. Please pause to be kind to guys like Ned, because someday, folks, we're all gonna be dead. So enjoy every second of your time on earth. Think of each day as a little rebirth and then pause and join me in this new mind space, because the threshold we're on is the doorway to grace. Thank you.